Greetings, John here with a look at Dying Light, the following. It's back, in enhanced form. Okay, so if there's one thing Polish development studios specialize in, it's producing enhanced editions of previously released games. CD Projekt Red has been engaging in this practice for ages now with the Witcher games, and now Techland is here to join the party. We know that this particular enhanced edition is loaded with tons of new content, including an entire new area in the countryside and plenty of vehicles to drive, and the team has been hard at work on updating the game over the course of the year as well. They've been fixing bugs, adding features and whatnot, but what we were most interested in is the promise of enhanced visuals. At least, that's what the trailers have been promising. Oh sure, the settings menu includes the options to disable film grain and pick from a number of different color and focus filters now, which is cool, but has the game itself really changed in any significant way? Well, not really. Aside from some subtle differences in post-processing that we noticed, the game looks pretty much identical to the original release from last year. There's also perfect parity between the two consoles this time in terms of detail levels, though Xbox One still runs at a lower overall resolution. That's not to say there aren't changes here, it's just that some of these changes aren't exactly new. Some of the patches last year actually introduced and subtracted certain features. Anisotropic filtering was improved on PlayStation 4 from the launch day version, for instance, bringing it up to par with the Xbox One version. On the other hand, vegetation density was actually decreased in order to improve performance, something which disappointingly was also applied to the PC version. So this should benefit performance then, right? After all, in the original version of the game, Xbox One suffered from some pretty serious screen tearing issues, while PS4 had its own share of problems, which we shall revisit momentarily. Switching over to updated footage captured from the Enhanced Edition suggests that some of the trouble spots in the original version now run smoother on Xbox One. Sure, it still tears and drops frames here, but it doesn't happen as often nor as severely. It's a definite improvement here. So it's all good then, right? Well, yes and no. We were concerned right away upon entering this town in the DLC region and discovering that simply walking around or watching the cutscenes produced very choppy results, frame times all over the place, and performance that felt incredibly jerky. Then we later ran into a battle in the woods and things were even worse. And how about driving down the country road? Better, but still under 30 FPS when compared to the PS4. So what's going on here? Unfortunately, it would appear that Dying Light suffers from a rather frustrating bug on Xbox One. If you use the Instant On feature available on the console, which allows the system to boot up almost instantaneously, you will run into performance issues on Xbox One. Frame rates are often well under 30 FPS when this occurs. Here's the thing though, if you do a clean restart of the console and boot the game up straight away, it actually runs much smoother. What's interesting is that when it does occur, the game actually forces vertical sync on Xbox One. In this mode, frame times bounce back and forth between 33 and 50 milliseconds most of the time, leading to incredibly jerky frame rates. After a clean restart, however, the game returns to an adaptive V-Sync setup instead. Driving through the countryside is much improved, as you can see here in the video. But when slowdown does pop up in the game, however, screen tearing can become rather severe, particularly in heavily forested areas. The real issue for us is that we ran into this issue regularly during testing. In fact, in order to sidestep it completely, you pretty much need to disable the Instant On feature or reboot your Xbox One before each session. Hardly convenient. So the PS4 version must be pretty good then, right? After all, the trouble spots we've seen here on Xbox One move much more smoothly on Sony's machine. Well, it is better overall, but there is another glaring problem on PlayStation 4, a problem which has existed since the beginning and has never been addressed by any of the patches. You see, when the rendering load drops on PlayStation 4, the game will randomly spike to 16 milliseconds. This means split-second moments where the game basically jumps to 60 frames per second before returning to 30. You can see these inconsistencies in the frame time graph right now. So the frame rate is going above 30 frames per second, huh? Is that really a bad thing, you might ask? Well, in this case, it's a very bad thing, and one that really hurts the presentation at various points during the game. It manifests itself primarily when looking towards the sky or while exploring interior locations. When you reach the school, for instance, the game begins to wildly flail between 16 and 33 milliseconds throughout the experience, leading to judder that feels even worse than the minor dips under 30 FPS. It was bothersome enough for me in the original version that I completely stopped playing the game in hopes of a fix that never came. What's worse is that by removing some of the foliage and improving general performance across the board, these spikes to 16 milliseconds have become even more common than they originally were. For all intents and purposes, the game perceptually looks, feels, and runs worse than it did at launch. Less foliage, more frame time spikes, and less consistent control. Now, theoretically, capping the frame rate at 30 FPS should solve this issue, and the vast majority of the game should then run at a locked 30 FPS. Yet, despite all the care and attention poured into the various updates and patches for this game, this single bug continues to exist. And until it is fixed, I really cannot wholeheartedly recommend the PlayStation 4 version either. Thankfully, the trusty old PC is here to save the day with an even more efficient version of the game. The original release struggled with performance when bumping up the view distance, but in its current iteration, performance is actually improved. The game runs like a dream on my PC, and from discussing the game with the community, it seems that I am not alone in this. Of course, the reduction in vegetation mentioned earlier possibly plays a role here, but with the distance slider maxed out, the game still manages to feel suitably lush regardless. Aside from that, however, Dying Light is awesome on the PC right now. It feels great at a solid 60 FPS, has plenty of options, and you can push the draw distance and details far beyond that of the console versions. If you haven't played it yet, or started out on the consoles, we'd have to recommend considering the PC version for the Enhanced Edition. It's really good. So that's where we're at right now. Xbox One has improved since last year in the main game, but it suffers from a performance bug when using the Instant On feature that often requires you to reboot the console. Beyond that, even when working properly, we do see a lot of extra screen tearing in the DLC area. While PS4, which could be rock solid, is plagued with wild frame time spikes that sap away any consistency the game might otherwise have. If Techland can solve this issue on PS4, it will actually be a solid version of the game. Likewise, hopefully the DLC area on Xbox One can be fixed up as well, as the main game already runs quite well and doesn't suffer from the issue we mentioned on PS4. Then of course you have the PC version, which has improved greatly since launch and is now far and away the best version of the game. So that's about all the time we have here for now. Just know that Dying Light is a cool game and one worth playing. But before you jump in, just make sure you have a grasp on how much frame time variations can impact your experience. And with that, this is John signing off.